Hi guys. Our third math assignment this week is just an extension of what we've done to this point. So in each of our assignments this week, we've been adding and subtracting tenths. We started with numbers between 0 and 1, then we added the ones place, and now we are adding the tens place. So our numbers are getting a bit bigger, but our strategies can stay fairly similar. Just stretch them to the next level. So our count forward, count back strategy basically asks us to just group the places and then put everything together once we're done. So for 25.3 plus 14.5, we've got 20 and 10, 5 and 4, and 3 tenths and 5 tenths. So that'd be 30, 9, and 8, which is 39.8. It's a little bit more difficult when we have to start working with numbers that are getting into more than 9 in their place. It means that we do a little bit of carrying over. So for 36.7 plus 28.5, we have 30 and 20 is 50, 6 and 8 is 14, and 7 tenths and 5 tenths is 12 tenths, which is 1.2. Then we'd put together 50 and 14, which is 64, and 1.2 would be 65.2. If we're subtracting, we do a similar thing, we're just working in reverse. So instead of adding the numbers, we take them away. So if I have 35.7 minus 23.4, I can say, well, 30 minus 20 is 10, 5 minus 3 is 2, and 7 tenths minus 4 tenths is 3 tenths, which means I have 10, 2, and 0.3, 12.3, 12 and 3 tenths. It's a little bit tougher when we have place values where the number we're subtracting by is less than the number we're subtracting. It means we go into the negatives. So for 42.6 minus 16.8, we have 40 minus 10, which is 30, 2 minus 6, which is negative 4, and 6 tenths minus 8 tenths, which is negative 0.2, or negative 2 tenths. Then we'd have to work with those numbers we have. So 30 minus 4 is 26. 26 minus 0.2 would be 25.8. So there's our 25.8. I wouldn't use this strategy for these kinds of questions. I would use them for this kind of question. But it still works for this if you're comfortable with it. The second strategy we looked at was the stacking strategy and using borrowing and carrying when we need to. We don't need to borrow and carry in this first question because there's nothing that carries above, but you will notice that I have the tenths place all nicely lined up, the ones place nicely lined up, and the tens place nicely lined up. So 3 and 5 is 8, 5 and 4 is 9, 2 and 1 is 3, so 39.8. For 36.7 plus 28.5, we do have some carrying to do. So I have 7 plus 5, which is 12, so I put the 2 in the tenths place, and I carry the 1 over to the ones place. Really, 7 tenths plus 5 tenths is 12 tenths, 1.2, so that 1 goes with the 1 place. Makes sense. 1 and 6 is 7, 7 and 8 is 15. So that 5 will stay in the ones place, and the 110 will go over to the tens with the rest of the tens. So 1 10, 3 tens, and 2 tens, that is 6 tens, so altogether we have 65.2. Subtracting, we do not need to use borrowing for the first one. It says 35.7 minus 23.4. Well, 7 minus 4 is 3, 5 minus 3 is 2, 3 minus 2 is 1. So we have 12.3. That one's what I call a simple stacker, right? We don't have to do any borrowing or carrying. We do have to borrow, though, in this question here, 42.6 minus 16.8. So if I start off looking over in the tenths place, I have 6 tenths minus 8 tenths, which I can't do unless I borrow when I'm using this strategy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take 1 from the 1 place, and I'm going to move it over here to the tenths place. So instead of 6 tenths, now I have 16 tenths. Really, it means 1.6. 16 minus 8 is 8. Now I have 1 minus 6, which once again, if I went to a store and I had $1, I couldn't buy something that was $6 unless I borrowed. So I'm going to borrow from the tens place. Going to move that 10 over to the ones place to give myself 11. 11 minus 6 is 5. And then I have 3 minus 1 left over, which is 2, so I have 25.8. So either of these strategies work quite well. You guys also have some other strategies that we've been practicing throughout the year. On the back side of this page, there are 5 adding questions and 5 subtracting questions for you to practice this work on. All right, guys, I'll be back with a video soon to review these questions.